Welcome to The Green Light. I'm your host, Shayla Nice, and it is the season 2 premiere episode, y'all. Can y'all believe it? We are back and better than ever. Season 2, new guests, amazing conversations, all for you. So when I thought of who would be the first guest to really kickstart this new batch of creatives that I will have on the show, one person came to mind, and that is Michael Barclay II. Michael is the Executive Vice President, Experientials for Essence Ventures. And when you think of Essence Ventures, think of all of these entities under one roof. So think of Essence Magazine, think of Essence Festival, think of Afropunk, think of all of these dope, amazing businesses, and it's all looped into Essence Ventures. So if you were ever curious about what it takes to be a creative marketing executive, Michael is going to give us the rundown. So stay tuned for this amazing conversation. And yeah, season 2, new guest, new vibe, all for you. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so I am super excited to have Michael Barclay II here on The Green Light with Shayla Nice. And to kind of kick off the conversation, I would love to get to the beginning and learn, as a creative marketing executive, what inspired you to get into this type of career field?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Chantel. I'm very excited to be on this podcast. I didn't know this field existed. So, growing up, I was very big into entertainment. I loved movies. I was a huge music person. I actually wanted to go into the music business. So I think that's where it kind of stemmed from, is just wanting to do entertainment and business, and entertainment and the music business specifically. And so, my degree was actually in finance. I kind of gave up. I won't say I gave up, but I definitely took the route of a more business approach. But while I was in school, I was also working as a college rep for Def Jam. So I was still kind of in the music space, in the creative space. And then after I graduated, I took a role in the finance side, and I realized I really was missing the creativity of entertainment. And so I got the opportunity after my first year of working in finance to actually transition into marketing. And I took a position within the New York Giants organization as a marketing director for one of their nonprofits. And so that allowed me to switch back into more of a creative role, things that I appreciated and loved and valued. And that's really, it all stemmed from my origins as a kid, really enjoying the entertainment and the creativity in the entertainment industry, and then being able to parlay that into a role in experiential marketing, which I didn't know even existed, as a position or even as an industry. So yeah.
So with your childhood, when you say you had an interest in entertainment, was it in music or acting or just the arts in general? What was kind of your interest to kind of lead you on to this quest for a career in the arts?
It was universally across movies or television and movies and music. I love storytelling, and that storytelling exists in all of those genres, and really just creating experiences are similar to storytelling and creating, a movie. I describe to people all the time, when we build our experiences, we're building a universe. And so it's very, very
Yeah.
much the same type of, muscle memory of storytelling and creating environments and scenarios and so forth. It's just different motivations, but that's ultimately what it was, just generally across the board when it came to anything music wise or television and movies. It was the storytelling aspect that I was really, really excited about.
That's awesome. So, just throughout your education and just the different positions you've had at the start of your career, did you have a strong support system to change kind of that business track to this side?
Absolutely. I think I put myself through more anguish than I expected. My parents, my mom, like I reached out to her after I had been agonizing over it for quite a while, and her response to me was, "Go for it.
Mm.
You're young. You got the rest of your life. Finance will always be there. So if you want to fall back on your degree, you always have that. So take the opportunity and move forward and see, explore it and see how it works out." So yeah, definitely always had support to explore the things. I think it's always been me being more hard on myself than anybody else.
Yeah.
So absolutely having the support has been great.
Mm. Now, has the supports remained the same, or has it changed throughout the years? Like, the more successful you become, have you noticed friends or family who may have, react differently towards your success, or have you had any of that type of like feelings as well?
No, not necessarily. I mean, quite honestly, my family still don't really understand what I do, which is always hilarious to me. Like, people don't know what you do; they just know you do something. They recognize the Essence brand. They know I work at Essence, but they if you had to have them break down exactly what it is that I do or what I've done in previous roles,
Yeah.
they don't really know. I'm always the same with my friends and my family. They're of course people that aren't part of the inner circle, there's different behaviors. But as far as like my folks, my people, no, everybody, I'm the same old. They treat me the same. Everybody's happy. Everybody's rooting for me, and more so because I'm doing what I want to do. Like if I was to shift
Right.
tomorrow and decide I want to cook, have a bakery, they would support me just as well. So just because I'm here at Essence and the things I've done in the past, like it has been less about the outward success and more of them seeing what I have gone through to get to where I am and being proud of the journey that they've been able to witness along the way.
Oh, that's amazing. And so, to keep it in a vein of like young adults, particularly those who may have been in college, now that you're out of school, you've been in multiple positions. Do you feel like people need to move to maybe certain cities or bigger cities to really get their kick into like creative fields, or do you find that you can basically, find that best job where they're at?
If you would have asked me this 4 years ago, I probably would have a different answer. But I think
Hmm.
in post pandemic society, when we were forced to learn how to work remotely and everything else, I think there are very much, remote opportunities available where you don't
Hmm.
necessarily have to move and transition. I mean, I grew up in North Carolina. Growing up in North Carolina, I felt like I had to get out of North Carolina to do the
Yeah.
things that I wanted to do. So, I've lived in New York, I've lived in Boston, I lived in Atlanta, I live in Chicago now. So I have my story did involve quite a bit of moving around, but now with so many companies going fully remote and all of that, I
Yeah.
don't think it's absolutely necessary. But the thing that I will say from a creative perspective, sometimes those moves help to motivate and inspire creativity. The
Mm.
years that I spent in Brooklyn, I will tell you, were probably the most inspired that I had as far as just
Wow.
being able to see things differently, operate with different groups and connect with different types of people and just having those types of experiences was actually was very much, inspirational and created a spark creatively. So the move can help in that manner, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary in this day and age.
That's a good point. Thank you for that. So, you've served as a brand liaison with the NFL, NASCAR, and the NBA. Can you talk about those experiences and share any highlights you remember?
Well, sports was always a big part of my life. So the ability to connect those things with my work was always exciting. Definitely enjoyed my fair share of NBA All-Star weekends going for work, and I worked Super Bowls. But I will say the most unexpected was NASCAR. I
Mm.
never, again, I grew up in North Carolina. My family, both sides of my family are from Talladega, Alabama, which has the famous Talladega 500. But
Yeah.
they didn't, we didn't do that. So like my family has no, they had no experience with going to the races and anything else. So when I went to my first race on behalf of one of my clients, I was like, "Oh, this is actually dope." Like I would have never
Yeah.
ever thought that this would be something, an experience that I would be into because of what you see in the stereotypes of the sports and the genre. But I was like hyped after my first race. I'm like, yo, this is pretty exciting. The way just, I would always think it's got to be boring to sit and watch people go around and around the track. But
Right.
being live, being on the ground, like being, the way that the areas that we were in the pit area and all of that, it's like, there's a lot of intricacies that go into the sport that I remember thinking, I know they're doing a big diversity push in NASCAR, but there's a lot here that we as a people could
Right.
easily jump on that if they did more to market and expose it. So I think that was one that was probably the most interesting was to, experience that because I had zero expectations of going to
Mhm.
enjoy it when I was told, like, oh yeah, we're doing this NASCAR partnership. We need you to go to this race next week. I'm like, okay,
Mm.
but it was dope. And, I had a great time and I, went to a couple, in the history of me working, with that group and the different clients. So I would definitely say that was one of the biggest shocks and surprises. I grew up on the NFL, I grew up on NBA. So I already knew I had love for those and I used to play sports back in the day too. So, but yeah, the NASCAR thing, especially given again, both sides of my family live right up the street from one of the biggest tracks in NASCAR and
Mhm.
everybody's like, yeah, no, we don't do that. I'm like, hey, if y'all ever been to to Talladega 500, they're like, nope, no, we don't do that. So I wasn't expecting it to be dope, but it was. It was dope.
That's awesome. And so with like have you found the perfect recipe for like work-life balance? Because I know with like your line of work, traveling is, one of those top responsibilities and going to events, but have you been able to like find your own time to like do your own hobbies or have you struggled with that work-life balance?
Work life balance is always a struggle, especially when you have a demanding job. I'm also, have family, married, I got kids. So balancing all of it has always been a struggle. But I do think, you
Mhm.
create routines. I do travel a lot, but my family, my kids, my wife have come to become used to it. I mean, even I remember during the pandemic, they're like, "Are you still here?" Because they're not used to me being at home for extended periods of time. So, during that time where I wasn't traveling, it was unusual. So I think it's just more setting boundaries. I have great teams that if I need to take a day, I've been in great organizations. If I need to do things, and just understanding, like I may work this whole weekend, and if I do so, then I'm going to need to take some days. So I think just being conscious of how much I'm going, what needs to be taken care of at home, and communicating, at home, when I'm on and off, and then creating those routines so that everything doesn't feel kind of crazy if I'm traveling or so forth. So it's always a struggle just because it's important, and
Yeah.
I've had great support both from my work family and my home family to be able to make it happen. But it's always a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, then but that's a good reminder for us all who may still, on their quest of like trying to find that perfect balance. Maybe balance is not the right word, but it's just what works best for you and where you're at in your life. And so like I kind of want to like fast forward to the present and talk
Mhm.
about Essence Ventures. So at Essence Ventures, can you describe what a typical work day can look like? Like, do you work fully remote or do you have to be in the office? And I kind of want to like, it's like a two-parter. So like what the day-to-day work can consist of and then what an in-person event like Essence Festival can also look like.
Two completely different things.
Yeah.
My day to day, because I am a remote employee of Essence Ventures, our headquarters is in Brooklyn. As I mentioned before, I'm in Chicago. So the majority of my days, unless it's a travel day where I have to be somewhere in person, is spent on Zoom meetings, meeting with my peers at the executive leadership level, meeting with my chairman or my CEO, or having group meetings with my team from the experiential side. That's pretty much the day to day from a planning, strategizing perspective. Having those conversations and moving the projects forward. A typical day on the ground of Essence Festival. First of all, it's a long day.
Mm,
Essence Fest is a no sleep weekend
mm,
when you're working. We're just not sleeping because we have, with Essence Fest, once we get started, once Friday hits, we have the convention center that, is open from the morning until the early evening. And then we have the concert series at the Superdome that goes, well into the late night. And then we have after events that we have to be a part of. And then we got to
mm,
get up first thing in the morning and do it all over again. And then in addition to the responsibilities of working, there's also responsibilities related to PR and press. So doing press conferences and talking to the press community. So that's a part of it during the day. Just a lot of running around New Orleans, as well as you know just any kind of speaking engagements as well. This past year,
yeah.
I did some moderation on some of our stages, so I would be, in the middle of planning and facilitating with the team, and I was like, oh, I got to jump on the stage and facilitate a conversation really quickly, and then I'm back down to go, do this, that, and the other. And again, any means of things that can happen. And like I said, your days start early, they end early, and they start back over. I mean, I tell the story. I put my entire life never drinking coffee. I've never been a coffee person.
Yeah.
At my first Essence Fest in 2022, I had coffee for the first time because I was out
Wow.
until 4 o'clock in the morning. I had a 7 o'clock a.m. call time for an event the next day. And I just had to get up and drink some black coffee just to keep it moving because, again, it takes a lot to build something like Essence Fest. Um,
Yeah.
and we take it very seriously because it is something big for our community. It's an artifact for the community. It's a safe space for our community. So we put a lot of work into it, and you put everything into it. So by the time festival is over, you're exhausted. One of the things you talk about work-life balance. One of the things I have incorporated after my first couple of festivals is that I add 2 days to my trip because I need to sleep for a day
Mm,
in New Orleans before I head out. So yeah, it's pretty intense, but it's very, very rewarding. I always like to take the time to talk to the community that has come out. And when you have those conversations, you realize the work that we're doing is worthwhile and it's worth missing a couple hours of sleep and being exhausted when it's over.
yeah. So at Essence Fest, are you arriving the week of, or how soon are you already there to kind of like hit the ground running with like making sure everything is okay?
So I typically arrive. So festival kicks off on Friday. I usually arrive either Sunday, the previous Sunday, or Monday. My team is on the ground even earlier than that, so the team will be
Right.
there the whole week before. So it's a big lead up to get everything ready for doors open on that Friday. Yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate this insight because a lot of people they just always see the end result, but for you, you are from day one. I'm sure as soon as last year's Essence Fest was over, you probably had meetings soon after for the current one that's to come this year. And so I'm always curious, like when because you're behind the scenes and you're at Essence Ventures, do you kind of like hear the chatter going on at in New Orleans, like during the whole experience to kind of like, keep your energy going from like the crowd and the fans and the audience? Like what feeds what do you what feeds off like your energy to keep going?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what is it'll drive you. I,
Yeah.
this past festival on Sunday, I was exhausted. I remember it's just being feeling beat down, to be honest. And I just, I got up and I went down on the convention center floor and just start talking to people and like hearing how they was feeling and getting that love. And you get charged up. You do. It charges you up talking to
Yeah.
people. We did some things this year that we'd never done before. Like we partnered with a local skate community active group, and we created this like skate park experience. And so I rode out there that day and was talking to
Mm.
the head of that community, or that community organizer, and he was saying how impactful the support that Essence Fest had given him is to his
Mm.
organization, how it's gonna help sustain them for another 5 years, and like things like that. Absolutely, because again, it it's a lot,
Yeah.
it's a lot going on, and you have to be able to stop. And I encouraged all of my teams, like, hey, I, I know it's been a busy weekend. I know everybody's putting their blood, sweat, and tears into it. And I told the same story I'm telling you. Like, get out and talk to the people. If you need to understand why we're doing this, if you understand why, you need to understand why it's so hectic and so crazy, go talk to the folks that are here. Just have a conversation with one or two people, and you'll get recharged and be ready to kill it for the last couple of days. So, yeah, absolutely. And to your question
Mm.
before, we had a meeting so festival was over on Monday. Tuesday morning, in the hotel that we were staying in New
Wow.
Orleans, we had a meeting to talk about festival for 2024. So, yeah.
Wow. Ooh, yeah. So the grind never stops. And from like a supporter of Essence, like, on my end, I've never attended Essence Fest, but I've attended a lot of the live streams powered by Hulu. And so, I mean, I was getting hyped from my room, watching the concerts. I can only imagine the energy, in those crowds and, all those, different stages that Essence Power. So, like, if I can feel it through the screen, I know people, in person are loving it just as much. And so, to keep it in the conversation of like being EVP for Essence Ventures, I want to know, like, how are you able to create content that appeals to multi generations like Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z? Because I feel like Essence is such a generational type of like entity that it applies to every age group. And so, like, how are you able to keep sparking creativity to keep bridging that gap?
First of all, we're intentional in wanting to be inclusive.
Yeah.
Um, and that's one of the things that we have started to do differently, and especially with Essence Festival, is to bring in the full universe of Essence Ventures. People are very familiar with Essence, Essence Magazine, and so forth. But Essence Ventures is also inclusive of Afropunk. Like that's part of our family of businesses. We have BeautyCon, that's also within the family of businesses. We have Essence Studios, and then even within Essence, we have Girls United. We've got Naturally Curly, and so all of that transcends upon New Orleans during Essence Festival. And that's what helps us be inclusive across generations, across gender. We have a men's experience at festival, in his
Yeah.
zone, so that we have something for everybody. And that's intentional. We purposely want to make it a place and an experience that is inclusive to all the different generations, to all the different, things that typically would separate folks. We're trying to bring everybody together. So the intention, and then using the power that we have within our network to bring those insights and those communities together is definitely how we do it. And it's very, again, to use the word once again, it's intentional. We are purposely
Yeah.
doing this. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm proof of like seeing, growing up on my mother's coffee table. I saw the magazines. Then
Yep.
when I became a young adult, I wanted to get it as well. And so, like, and then now being able to have access to like Girls United and the summits that are in my city, seeing that in real time and networking and just seeing the faces behind the magic at Essence, it all matters, and that type of representation is so important. So yeah, the intentionality is totally there. And so, just kudos to Essence Ventures and just you and all of your colleagues who really push forth great content. Um,
Thank you.
so
Yeah.
yeah, going a little with like, your professions, your line of work, I want to kind of like get advice for a skill set standpoint. Can you kind of break down why having like a project management background is important for your line of work? Because if people don't have that type of background, what courses or resources could they use to learn this type of skill set?
Yeah. I mean, anything that we do, especially on the experiential side, is just a big project,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's a combination of pieces put together to create the whole. And so the ability to be able to manage those pieces to get it through the finish line is very important. Um, and again, project management, it's a whole genre. You can get degrees, you can get certification, you can get all these things, but it's really how are you able to take nothing and turn it
Mhm.
into something? And
Mm.
so that's really the core skill when it comes to that. And a lot of it is really just trying to is seeing the steps and the pieces and don't get intimidated, like understanding that you got to do A to get to B to C, and ultimately we're going to get to Z. And
Mm.
so it's really important to be able to break it down like that. And then other, skills included, not only just project management, but being able to manage timelines. Because again, it's a time business too. My number
Yeah.
one advice to anybody that gets into experiential is number one, be on time. And it sounds very simple, but it is a bigger it has a bigger meaning. It's yes, be on time for your meetings, be on time, but also stay on schedule.
Mm.
Because again, if you can't properly time manage and schedule, then that's going to create stress. That's going to, uh, potentially lead to mistakes and oversight and things like that. And you know, creating a universe, which is what you do when you build events and experiences, there's so many opportunities to have mistakes and shortfall. And the last thing you want to do is start off being late, because if you start late, then it just trickles down from there. Ways to pick up those skills. That's an interesting question because I never took any project management courses, but it's I think
Wow.
some of it is you just learn, you know,
Yeah.
between taking on opportunities and different roles that give you the opportunity to learn hands on. Yeah, like I said, there are definitely courses and certifications and things like that you get in project management. Um, but I think it's just more so learning from doing, or at least from someone else that has done that does it. That helps as well. If you know
Yeah.
somebody or see something, some of the people historically that I have ushered into this business are folks that have just come up to me in an event and like, hey, I'm interested in doing this. How do I learn to do what your team is doing? And for folks that are serious, it's been well, connect with this person that's on my team, and you can shadow them, or you can come and be a volunteer or an intern to actually be able to see for yourself how this works. And it's really just a lot of just taking on a lot of knowledge, whether it be hands on, learning from others, or just to experience things that you go through while you're going through the processes.
That's good. And I feel like a lot of people, if they haven't had those experiences yet, they may feel intimidated. But for you, you hold a leadership position. So, and a lot of it can fall on your plate if your team isn't like holding up to their end. So, as a leader, how do you keep the morale going so that, communication is clear so that, if people fall short, there's some type of support system. Like, how do you know, like, what's your leadership type of style for like your colleagues?
My leadership style, I like to call it kind of like the player coach.
Mm.
I've done pretty much everything in experiential, every job you could think of, from being a coordinator to running a national tour to a strategist to managing creative. I've done it all. Um, so I can relate to the team. And I'm not a micromanager. I allow people
Mm,
to figure things out on their own, but I'm always here to help. And I think that's always my
yeah.
thing. Like if you got it, you don't you don't necessarily need to do it my way. You know what I want. You know the outcomes that I want. If you have a way to do it that works best for you, then by all means do it. If you get
Yeah.
stuck, don't stay stuck. I always tell people don't stay stuck. If you're
Mm,
stuck, come to me so that we can figure things out and you don't just have to sit here spinning your wheels. Um, I'm big on managing and maintaining team morale. I've had some great managers in my past, and they've always, one of my best managers from previous role. Her whole thing was if their employee is not whole at home, like if there's something that's bugging them at home, then they're not going to be able to handle work.
yeah.
And so in those cases where I know people have things that, they got to take care of at home, go take care of your home. We got you. We'll cover this until you're ready to come back. And then,
Right.
showing appreciation, understanding that again, because I have done most of the things that I'm asking my team to do, I know how intense some of these things can be and how
Yeah.
taxing and draining. And so to come from a position of understanding and appreciation and acknowledging the work, I make sure that my team shines. I don't have to.
Mm,
I don't feel like it's me. I've had those managers too, where every idea from the team
yeah.
is magically his idea. I'm like, bro, you didn't come up with that. That was me.
Right.
So to me, my career and my pedigree is established. So if I got somebody on
Mm,
my team that has a dope idea that saved us a bunch of money or created an experience that was above and beyond what we expected, that's them. Matter of fact, here,
ooh,
go present your idea to the greater organization. I have no problem. I don't, come into any situation with my teams with egos because ultimately I feel like their success is my success. Which again,
mm,
I've had managers who weren't like that. That would be completely jealous or feel threatened by employees that may know more than them or have better relationships than they do or maybe more creative, and it never made sense to me because I'm like, if you hired these people, if you
right.
manage these people and they're successful, that just makes you look like a better manager. Like you're shining when they're shining. But everybody doesn't operate like that. But for me, I love it when my team shines. I have no ego when it comes to people on my team showing out and being great. So yeah, and just supporting that. Being able to support anything that they're interested in, if it's above and beyond their duties, they want to try something new. I'm like, go ahead. You can try and explore if there's some career development things that they want to be involved in by all means, because I think, people need to take care of themselves and feel like
Yeah.
they're protected by their manager and have the ability to do what's best for them. And when you give that, you get it back tenfold from your team.
Wow, that's amazing. That sounds like the perfect collaborator, of how work together as a team. And so for people who may struggle with imposter syndrome, how do you push away self-doubt as a leader and decision maker? Because like you've been in rooms with, top leaders, celebrities, and like L'Oreal and Reebok, like the names goes on and on. Like how do you make sure you're not doubting why you're in the room?
First of all, the fact that you're in the room means you're supposed to be there first.
Yeah.
You know, that you're in the
Yeah.
room, you're supposed to be here. Um, Secondly, they struggled to get in this room the same way that you did,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Thirdly, everybody's trying to figure it out. You know, some people hide it better than others, but all of us are trying to figure it out. All of us, we don't, no one has it completely figured out at any level. Everybody is working every day to be better the following day. So, and you win some and you lose some. You might be in that room and you might bomb your presentation or whatever you're in that room for, that doesn't mean you're an imposter. It just means you had a bad day.
Yeah.
That just means you were off. That means you got to come back stronger the next time. So, you know, I, I mean, we all struggle with it at times, but you got to shake yourself out and realize that it's a reason for you to be in this opportunity. I don't believe in luck. It is preparation and opportunity when they meet. So you are prepared and the opportunity presented itself. It's time for you to go kick the door down and go do what you do. So yeah, it's definitely not easy sometimes, but I think again, you just have to check yourself and be like, I'm supposed to be here. I prepared
Mm,
myself to be here in the same way that people in here, matter of fact, in some cases, more than the way some of these other folks is in this room were prepared.
yeah.
So, you just gotta go and do what you do. And again, just because you go in there and even if you have a bad outing, doesn't mean that you're an imposter. It just means, it just didn't line up for that day. You just dust yourself off and go back into the next room and show out when you get in the next room.
Absolutely. For 2024, where would you describe how you will want to carry the rest of this year out?
Um, I think this is the year, and I had this conversation earlier today with somebody where I'm just going for it,
Mm,
getting an opportunity to do something or being offered to do something. It's like, all right, let's do it. Let's try it. It's cliche, but it's like the year of yes. Yep. Are
yeah,
you
why
interested in
not?
this?
Yeah.
Yep. Let's try it. Yep. Want to do that? Yep. Well, let's go for it. Let's see, what do we have to lose? I think that's really where I am now, is really just stepping out and continuing to push just to see what else can shake. I think that's one of those things where you talk about imposter syndrome. Sometimes you got to look back at what you have accomplished to realize you've done some amazing stuff. Like you've come
Yeah.
a long way. And when you see yourself in that light, then you're like, well, what else can I do? And I think that's really what it is now. It's like, what else can I do? So we're going to
Yeah.
push through and see what 24 has to offer.
Awesome. I love it. And so I feel like this is like the perfect sentiment to like and to wrap up our call. And so before I let you go, I always have every guest send me two of their favorite songs. It could be their all-time favorite songs or just songs that they're currently like into at the moment, because at the end of every season, I always have a playlist to accompany the podcast. So I love to know, like, do you have any two picks to for me to add to my playlist?
It's hard for me to pick just two songs because
Mm,
I love music and I'm always listening to something. But
yeah.
last year, I was doing a keynote speech for Event Marketer Summit. And maybe 10 minutes before it was time for me to go on, the producer was like, do you have intro music? I'm like, I didn't really think about intro music, but you know what? I think a cool song to come out to would be Rock Boys by Jay-Z. And he was like, that's a great pick. I was like, yeah, that's my intro music. So I would say the Rock Boys by Jay-Z definitely gets me um, in the mood to, be up and talking. Um, I'm also a huge and diehard Outkast fan.
Ooh,
um,
same.
all my life. Well, ever since they've been in the business since the early '90s. So if I had to pick another song, it'd definitely be an Outkast song. Um, it's a tough one now to pick a favorite. I would say Black Ice Remix by
Ooh,
Outkast would be my
the
other
second one.
favorite.
Those are like, you can't go wrong with Jay Z and Outkast. I'm like, you already like starting high with like the what guests to come have to give me for their choices. But yeah, I love it all. So once again, I just want to thank you so much, Michael, for saying yes and agreeing to being on my show. I really appreciate you taking the time to really pour into pour into my show and for listeners to kind of learn more about your background and see that there are other career fields, in the creative industry that they may not have never known about, but now that you've kind of given them like your background and kind of like your day-to-day responsibilities, hopefully it sparks some, enthused people to, really tap into this type of industry. So once again, thank you so much.
No problem. No problem at all. Happy to do it. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
If you love today's guest and our green light convo, please tell someone, your mama, daddy, cousin, sister, brother, auntie, uncle, about the show, and be on the lookout for the next episode.